Welcome, everyone, to Friday 15 with Master B2B. My name is Brian Beck, and I'm here with Andy Hoar, my partner in our thought leadership series and B2B e-commerce and digital leadership community. Andy, welcome to Friday.
Yeah, so Friday in Chicago in March means that Thursday was 32 degrees, and today it's going to be 70.
That's just insane, dude. We were in the summit last week, our Master B2B Mindshare Summit. And one day it was snowing and 28 degrees, and the day before it was 72 and sunny. Like, what is wrong with Chicago?
Don't worry about it because we're going to be in Vegas next week, where in
Right.
March it's 98 degrees.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm here in Southern California, and it's been like high 90s this whole week, and it's just it's just that time of year, right? It's crazy. So, anyway, folks, we have a great Friday 15 for you this week. We're talking about some of the things that came out of our summit, and one of the big themes, of course, is all about AI. But before we get into that, let's first check out our wrong button. Let's check out our breaking news. All right, fun with the StreamYard here. Did you see this on Reuters? Exclusive: Meta planning sweeping layoffs as AI costs mount. Fascinating. Meta's workforce could shrink as much as 20% amid their focus on AI, from 80,000 to 64,000 employees. And this would increase their revenue per employee. Get this, from 2.2 million to 3.5 million per employee. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
That's just ridiculous. Yeah,
it's so high, man. And a layoff of this magnitude could drive 3 to 5% earnings per share upside in 2026 and 4 to 7% upside in 27, provided the savings are really redeployed into AI innovation. Andy, we asked this question last week at our summit. We had a panel talking about hiring in the age of AI. And are AI agents going to replace people on the org chart? And I asked the audience during that, I facilitated that panel. I said, how many of you think that AI is going to reduce your headcount? And every single person raised their hand. Now, our panel didn't say that. But, so the public line is, no, AI is not going to cut any jobs unless you're Meta or Google or somebody, but or Amazon or whatever. But a lot of our audience, thinks that it's going to reduce headcount. What's your reaction to this Meta announcement?
Well, first of all, this sent shockwaves through high tech because Meta's spending hundreds of millions of dollars, literally billions of dollars, trying to get these top people to come join. Remember that last year where some were getting $100 million pay packages? One guy's apparently with stock options can be as high as $1 billion over time. So they're trying to bring in all this AI talent, but they announced that they're going to lay off basically 20% of the workforce. Now they're saying that's not confirmed yet, but somebody leaked that story. This is, I think, the theory of AI's promise is going to be put to the test.
Yeah.
If they really do shrink their workforce by 20% and get down to 64,000 and drive that revenue per employee up to 3.5 million, then the analysts say, like you said, the earnings per share stuff is real. And so you know what happened when this was announced? I remember the days when companies would announce layoffs and their stock price would go down. Remember that? Now when they announce layoffs, the stock price goes up.
This is crazy.
And they haven't even done it yet. So it's just the possibility of laying people off drives up the stock price. But you know what? Here's the deal. When you're spending, I think they're going to spend $600 billion on data center infrastructure by 2028, I think it is.
Goodness.
Next year, or this year, I'm sorry, $135 billion.
Right.
This is getting very real. You can't spend all that money on both people and infrastructure. So I guess they've decided they're going to go with infrastructure and see what happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got Google at 180 billion, Amazon at 200 billion. I mean, these companies are investing enormously in AI. What's interesting, Andy, is to me, the tech companies, the Metas, the Amazons, et cetera, get away with that, and their stock price goes up. I think there's some reticence amongst our more conservative, large B2B audience, B2B company audience, regarding that. I mean, a tech company can say that with a straight face while they're investing $200 billion in AI. Whereas, somebody like, I don't know, a 3M or somebody, they announce layoffs because of AI. It's going to be, I think, a different reaction. We'll see. But I mean, this gets to the core of what we're going to talk about today in our
Well, there
Friday.
is one other kind of side note about this, because
Yeah.
this week there was also an article that came out saying that Apple is spending almost nothing on AI infrastructure, like in the low double digits, like 10, $20 billion, which is nothing for them. But they still generated $1 billion in revenue from AI.
How do they measure that? How do
You
they
know how
measure
they're doing it? By
No.
charging everybody else a toll to
Oh,
be included in their ecosystem. So
nice
I
to be
think like
Apple.
80% of that is coming from subscription revenue for ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Apple says, hey, we don't have to actually build any of this stuff. At least they think this. We can just charge everybody else access to our
Right. Right.
ecosystem. And
Oh,
so they could end up looking like geniuses. That said, they're way behind everybody else on AI. So at some point, that's going to catch up with them.
oh, maybe, maybe not. I mean, maybe they're going to let everyone else learn on their dime and, just charge access to their ecosystem. And good to be Apple, man. When you have when you have the ecosystem and you control it, you control the gate, right? So let people in the gate, but they got to pay for it. So good. It's a speakeasy for AI. What do you know? So Andy, this all dovetails really well in terms of what we're going to talk about today on our Friday 15, because we need to make this real. Is AI creating production or productivity? In other words, is it really making people more productive, or just causing us to do more work? And is the quality of the work dropping? This is the fascinating thing. And when you hear about these companies like Meta reducing workforce, I mean, it implies that people are using AI to the companies using AI to fill roles, to make their folks more productive, all the rest. And in fact, this article from Bloomberg shows that we found 40% of worker time is actually freed up by AI, right? Jobs need an urgent redesign as AI advances. Urgent redesign. Interesting. What was your take on this article, Andy?
Yeah, so this kind of set it off. This was early this week. It was
Yep.
all over the place. People were saying, wait a minute, is it really freeing up 40% of people's time?
Right.
Now, I agree with the second point, which is that we need to redesign roles. I'm 100% on board with that. But
Right.
there's some question about whether it's really freeing up 40% of the time. What
Right.
we have found, and I think we're going to see in some of the research, is that for certain people, it is freeing up time. Let's call them the average performers. Let's just leave it at that. I don't want to be
Sure.
judgmental here, but we
Right.
have on screen, we have a guy blowing bubbles.
Is that
But
you?
there's research that was done by Active Track that said the share of workers at risk of disengagement, as they call it, defined as underutilized at least 75% of the time,
Yep.
rose from 19% just after ChatGPT's release to
Wow.
23%. So some percentage of people are loafing. They're using AI to do their homework, basically, right?
Right.
And we've
Right.
seen that. We've all seen crap that's been sent to us by email or posted on LinkedIn. That was literally that crap.
Yep.
And so there's some people willing to settle for that, right? Well, I could do a good job or I could do an AI job that's fast and cheap and easy. I'm going to go with the fast and cheap and easy one.
Right.
It does raise the question about quality, which we'll get to in a moment.
Yes, exactly. Well, then there was, this all we dug a little deeper. We found this article in the Wall Street Journal and it says AI isn't lightening workloads; it's actually making them more intense. And this that research you were citing, Andy, from Gabriella Mausch, I think is how you pronounce her name. She's chief customer officer at Active Track. She said it's not that AI doesn't create efficiency; it's that the capacity it frees up immediately gets repurposed into doing other work, and that's where creep is likely to happen. So this is the kind of the other end of the spectrum, right, Andy? This is not the sort of the average worker, as you call them. This is the folks that are looking to do more and be more productive and advance in their careers. They're just working harder, aren't they?
They're able to do more, therefore they do. you know
Right.
and there's a term for it. It's called Parkinson's law, which says that the project fills the time it's allotted. So if you allot 10 minutes to do something, you'll do that work. And if you allot yourself 2 hours, you'll find additional things you can to add to that, arguably, and it'll fill the time. And the question becomes, is the 2 hours you spent on it significantly better than the 10 minutes? that you spent on it. And it depends on the role, right? It depends on the task, but
Wow.
AI is now kind of reversing that, which is, well, gosh, if I can do it in 2 minutes, I'll just do it
Well,
now.
it's interesting, Andy. I don't know, in terms of your own usage, but I find that, the LLMs prompt you to go deeper. They'll
Yeah.
come back and say, "Hey, I can do this. Do you want me to get that analysis for you?" And you're like, "Yeah, get that analysis."
Of
And
course,
it
that's
goes and
right
gets that
after they
analysis.
tell you that. That's right after they tell you that was a brilliant insight that you had, Brian.
That's
And
right. That's right. It's complimentary. Wow, Brian, you're so smart. Why don't we go deeper on this topic? Would you like to get this analysis? And then it asks you again, would you like that analysis? Oh, yeah, I need that analysis. I need to look at that. And so by
I
the
didn't
time you're
realize I
done,
needed it, but now I do. So yes.
it's like doom scrolling. I just keep going. Like, yeah, yes, give me more data, please. And it just keeps on going. And eventually I'm like, wait a minute, where did 2 hours go?
Well,
Right?
but then of course, if you're really disciplined about it, just imagine how much more you can do now. And that's what's happening is,
Right.
if you had 60 minutes to do three things
Yeah.
and you're able to do those three things in 20 minutes, some percentage of the population is going to go watch March Madness.
Ooh,
The other percentage of the population, some percentage of the population is going to go, oh, I've got 40 minutes available now. I'm going to use that to do more work. The question, though, is that at the beginning we asked this question, are they doing the same quality of work? Or is the quality standard bent down? And yes, they're producing more, but the quality isn't as good. Then it also begs the question, not to get too complex, does it matter? Because sometimes human investment in quality is not actually appreciated nor required. So
right,
these are all
right.
kind of the questions that are swirling.
Well, I think, from my perspective, Andy, we're almost suffering from too much information. I mean, think about it for a minute, right? I mean, again, this like I find myself guilty of this. I'll keep looking at I'll respond to the LLM. And I'm only half joking. It's kind of like doom scrolling because it'll ask you for more things and more things. And you have to, it's almost like too much information. It reminds me of, I don't know. There was a book about 20 years ago by a guy named Paco Underhill. It was called Why We
Oh,
Buy.
yeah.
Remember,
Yeah, yeah.
that
I
book?
remember that. Sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
and the whole theory. I remember reading this when I was in the retail side of e-commerce, and it was the whole. One of his points was about the assortment, and online we have this huge opportunity in e-commerce to add extended aisle, billions of products. Like I'm gonna have 2 million products on my site, and if you're not Amazon with all their search algorithms, that can get dangerous. His point was, that there's an opportunity cost, and if you overwhelm with too much choice and too much information, you end up confusing your customer, confusing the consumer of the information, or in this case the product offerings, and they don't buy anything. They're hamstrung. They're like, oh, I can't buy that because I won't buy all these other things. And it was a good point. And that's why, if you think in the retail side, we used to think about curated, assortment. When I was at places like Harbor Freight and PacSun, what is the right assortment to offer to that customer online? And it may not be good to offer them everything unless that's your business model and you have great search. So I'm wondering if we're kind of dealing with the same kind of dynamic here where there's so much information available to me and it just keeps on going that I can't kind of discern it, but I kind of get it down to the. Anyway, it's just an interesting dynamic that I find myself falling into as I'm doing research on LLMs. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's actually that's been studied too. It's called the paradox of choice,
Right.
which
That's
is
it.
that, if you
That's
give
it.
too many choices to people, they get confused. And more often than not, they actually limit the amount of choice. So if you give them 100 choices, they're going to choose from within like two or three. If you give them five choices, they'll choose within five.
Yep.
So actually offering them more choices causes them to snap in the other direction. But yeah,
Right.
there is a lot of info slop floating around,
Right.
and
That's my point.
but the question is, are people generating productive effort around this, or are they just filling more time? And I think on the next slide we talk a little bit about that,
Yeah.
where
This is, yeah. Go
this
ahead.
guy from Steelhead Technologies said what he's finding is that the work that is out there, it seems unbounded, which is an
Yeah.
interesting way to look at it. It's like
Yeah.
the appetite is always to do more, not to like go home at noon. I heard somebody describe this as the appetite grows with the eating.
Oh,
And
right.
I think
Yep.
that's actually a clever way of phrasing it. The more you do, the more you do. And the more you're doing, the more you're doing. So then you
Yeah.
wake up, at the end of the day or whatever, you're like, I did a lot, but was it good?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I mean, so I think the point here is that, for those who have a some form of work ethic, AI amplifies. It doesn't reduce work. This is from information, or the source of this data we're sharing here is the 2026 State of Workplace Report. It says after AI adoption, every single work category increased. Email up 104%, messaging up 145%. Nothing decreased in this study. The promise of doing less with AI is simply not showing up in the data. In other words, we're just doing more, right? It went on to say that only 3% of users are in the productivity sweet spot. This is interesting. Workers who spend 7 to 10% of their time in AI tools show the highest productivity. In other words, they're not using it for the majority of their work, but they're using it for 7 to 10% of the time. But it's only 3%. And then 57%, the vast majority, spend less than 1% of their time there, which is maybe that speaks to the learning curve. They don't know how to use it. They spend some time there. It sounds great, but then they don't really spend the time to learn how to maximize the productivity. Go ahead.
This kind of reminds me of like a race, like the Indy 500 or something like that. And the smart drivers are the ones who go the fastest when required. But if all you do is put the pedal to the metal the whole time, you'll run out of gas and you'll lose because you'll burn up all of your fuel, right? I think energy and fuel are about the same here. So what that research shows is that 7 to 10% of the time you should put the pedal to the metal and win tactically throughout the race. But also, if you sit back and you don't put the pedal to the metal at all, like less than 1% of the time, you're going to lose the race. So it feels like there's an analogy here that it's the strategic and tactical use of AI seems to produce disproportionate gains. Whereas if you use it too little, it's not useful. And if you use it too much, it's also not useful.
You have to invest enough time to know how and where to use it, right? I mean, I think that's what that's saying. And so getting your hands dirty and getting your hands on it, I probably spend 5%, maybe a little more of my time using AI for things. Whether that's I'll use it for content creation as an initial starting point for certain things, right? LinkedIn posts, that sort of thing. I don't let it write it entirely because I have to put it in my voice, but it definitely is an efficiency driver. Anytime I have a task, like I need to create imagery or something I might normally give in research, Excel documents, things like that. I mean, I find it, for me, it is helpful, to accelerate certain tasks. Fill out this spreadsheet, this information. Go find me information. Go fill out this column, that I need information on, and based on everything else that's in the other 3 columns, that sort of thing. It can be really a time saver. I would normally, in the past, I would have given that to an analyst to do.
Yeah.
Right?
I think the challenge too is, are you letting the AI, not you exclusively, but
generally,
are people using AI to drive what they're doing, or are they using it to enhance what they're doing? I think right now, if it's very capable of enhancing, I don't know that it can drive. The question is, though, as it gets better and better and better, will eventually drive a lot of this stuff. But I think some people who are using it to drive are way ahead of it. And the people who are not using it at all are way behind. So we're going to cross over some threshold at some point, though.
Yeah. So we asked our community this question: does AI lighten your workload, or are you just doing more work? The answer on LinkedIn, 67% said, we're doing more work. Only 33% said it lightens my workload. And I would agree with that. I mean, if I think about my own, I am filling the time. So I have it do my spreadsheet. That would have taken me half an hour if I did it myself. Now
you got to do something else. That's right. You need that time.
Yeah, I fill my time. I don't know if I would say I'm producing more work. I'm not necessarily working more hours because I work a lot, but I'm definitely, I don't know. Is this the case with you, Andy? Do you find yourself in the same situation?
I do. And what one more complicated dimension of this is, you probably find this too. I can use AI to do this, but it's probably still not an efficient use of my time to even spend my time telling AI to do this. It's probably better for me to give that to somebody else who would use AI to do it.
Sure.
However, you start doing this calculation in your head. It's going to take me X amount of time to explain to this person. You know what I mean?
Because you just explain it to AI instead of
exactly. So, but then, like, is that really a good use of your time even doing that? So it's lowering the the bar to be able to do work. But that's not always a great thing because you have to figure out where's your specialized skill set. And in my case, I did some legal work recently with ChatGPT. I'm like, yeah, I was able to do that legal work and save money and time with a lawyer. But was that a good use of my time, or should I have been doing something else and given that to somebody to do? That's the challenge now. So when it lowers the bar, it just makes it easier for me to perhaps not use my time as productively. That's the challenge.
Well, we've got, our community, when we asked these questions at the summit, we talked a lot about this. A lot of the task, a lot of the behavior and people where people are using AI is in repetitive tasks, lower level, customer service, things like that. I mean, I could just talk about how I use it in my Enceba business, the Amazon business. I have a team that they if it's a repetitive task, they're using AI to do some of the research. Like, for example,
But they are, not you.
yeah,
That's the
they are.
point.
They
But
are,
you
but
can do that too, right?
it makes them more efficient. I mean, I have one person who does research for me, and she has limited time per week. She's part-time, and she'll go out now and she's using Perplexity to go and look at websites and find information about companies. And so she doesn't have to do it. It pulls in the basic information. Then we apply some intelligence to it and say, okay, well, is this, a good fit for our company, that sort of thing. But we're using AI to do the repeat task because it's a repetitive task. Go out, find this information on this website, pull back information on this company, what their URL is, what their company description is, all that stuff. So it's really fascinating. But we had this conversation, Andy, at our summit, and about productivity versus production. And Stacy Hanks, the leader of e-commerce, senior leader there at SureWorks, was talking a lot about some of the things she was dealing with in a peer panel. You want to talk about this? You were in this one.
Yeah, I was in it. It was great because somebody said, "Oh, I use AI to produce more press releases." For example, as a person who was in Marcom, or Marcom was part of her role,
Sure, sure.
and she's like, "I'm able to write so many more press releases, do so much more content than I was able to do before." And I just kind of posed the question, "Is that productivity?" And she goes, "Oh, of course." I'm like, "Is it productivity or is it just production?" And I said, "What AI is producing for you, is it the same quality as
Right,
if you written it yourself?" She goes,
right,
"No."
right,
So then
right,
it begged this question of, all right, you're producing more, but are you actually more productive? Because if you have to go back and fix all that
right,
stuff, or it
right.
lowers the standard. So then it
Yeah,
really begged the question, what is the objective standard here in quality? And what is productivity? Because
right.
productivity should be about maintaining a certain quality standard, right? You're doing more of the same quality work
Yeah,
in less time. But if you're
right.
doing more of lower quality work in the same time, is that really productivity or is that just more production?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think look, there's a layer here. The good news is, Andy, is that there's a role for humanity here, which is to judge, making a judgment about that, and understanding what is, how do I best use it to produce the same or even better quality work, in a limited format. More isn't necessarily better, right? And to
Well,
your point,
yeah, and that's it doesn't necessarily matter all the time. So
right?
in
Well,
some
that's true
cases,
too.
quality matters. In other
Yep.
cases, it really doesn't.
Right.
And
Right.
and the really doesn't category is where AI can increase productivity as well as production because the quality doesn't matter as much.
Where
But
is
for
my
things that
order?
really, yeah,
Right.
exactly. But
Right.
where things really matter and you're using AI just to produce, that I think that's a bad decision. We see it all the time on LinkedIn. You can tell when people have
Oh,
had
totally, man.
AI write stuff, and
Yeah.
you're just like, I'm not going to read this anymore because I can tell it's just written by a robot and it's not very good.
Yep.
That's where the quality standard is lowering. But if you ask the person who created that, they probably say, "Oh, I was really productive today." I'm like, I don't think you were.
LinkedIn and HR resume, people trying to go through resumes, it's just making the quality, it's that much harder. So, I mean, the relationship, there's going to be a reaction to all this, and the relationships are going to be even more important. But all right, Andy, we're at like Friday, like 45 here, so everyone can yell at us who's listening. Folks, thanks for listening today. We have a couple quick announcements. Want to remind everyone that our B2B Master B2B Nexus service is available. This is your personal digital lifeline to quick answers from industry experts and practitioners. We connect you with people to limit the risk of making the wrong decision, getting the right data, etc. We also now have a service attached to this, Andy, as part of our Nexus, where we are sourcing candidates for open roles, as well as helping you with projects, companies with projects, where we can bring experts in specific areas to bear for project work. So we've expanded Nexus to include really not only expert advice, but also matching. So if you're in market for a role, or if you're looking for someone for a project or for a full-time or interim role, Nexus can help you fill your need there. So take a look at our website, masterb2b.com, Nexus, and learn more. And finally, want to remind everyone that our Friday 30 is available to everyone via your favorite podcast service. Take a listen, take a look on Spotify, Apple, on our website, YouTube, etc. You'll find us, and please give us a good review. We appreciate that. Andy, any final words for our Friday 90 minutes here before we go?
No.
Whoa. Well, okay. Well, that threw me for a loop here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will be back next week for another Friday 15, and maybe we'll talk about some other exciting stuff. Probably AI, maybe some other cool stuff. So, folks, thanks for listening today. We'll check you next week.